Russia has missed yet another deadline set by Putin for capturing Pokrovsk and Kupiansk, and the deadlines have once again been postponed. This was stated by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. He held a meeting with the heads of key defense and security sectors. Zelenskyy listened to intelligence reports on Russia's ability to continue the war and its plans for the coming months, as well as on the political and economic situation inside the aggressor country. In addition, according to Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the meeting outlined Ukraine's plan for defensive measures during the winter months.
We will continue to apply our long-range sanctions. Special services, primarily the Security Service of Ukraine and the Ukrainian Army, have been given the relevant tasks. We are preparing to coordinate with key partners on diplomatic efforts, taking into account changes in the assessment of the situation. We are developing measures that will help intensify diplomacy. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Ukraine's defense forces destroyed a Russian NABOU radar station in occupied Crimea. By the way, this is one of the enemy's key surveillance systems. Also in the area of Tokmak in the occupied part of Zaporizhzhia region, a Russian military train was hit. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Since the beginning of the day, 69 combat engagements have been recorded on the front line. For more details about the situation on the battlefield, watch the report.
The warriors of the 15th Mobile Border Detachment, Stolovi Cordon, struck Russian positions in the Kursk direction. As a result of precise hits by kamikaze drones, 6 enemy shelters along with their personnel were destroyed. In particular, 5 Russian soldiers were eliminated and 3 more were wounded. And in the Kharkiv region, operators from the border brigade Phoenix detected and neutralized a group of Russian invaders as they tried to hide in a wooded area. In addition, Ukrainian fighters burned down Russian positions from which they had been launching FPV drones. Thanks to precise counter-battery fire, fighters from the 44th Artillery Brigade, named after Hetman Danilo Apostol, destroyed 4 Russian command posts, D-30 guns and T-100B howitzers. They shared footage of their combat operations online. At the same time, in the Sloviansk direction, Ukrainian fighters repelled attacks by Russian occupiers in the areas of Serebryanka, Verkhnyo-Kamyanske and Pereizne. On the Kostiantinivka section of the front, the Russians assaulted the positions of Ukrainian defenders near Pleshivka, Rusin Yar, and towards Sofivka. And on the Pokrovsk front, the most intense section, clashes were taking place near the settlements of Rodinske, Novoekonomichne, Mirnohrad, Kotlina, and Filia.
That's what's happening right now in Pokrovsk as well. The situation is very difficult, no doubt about it. From the south, the Second Army continues to infiltrate Pokrovsk. At the same time, Pokrovsk serves as the rear for Mirnohrad, which is holding out more steadily. But this very stability is ensured by logistics. For this reason, the Ukrainian Defense Forces concentrated on pushing the Russians out of the northern part of Pokrovsk and the industrial zone are trying to create a more or less stable corridor. At the same time, the enemy's 51st Army is encircling Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad from the north. This is the very same army that previously created a salient towards Druzhkivka, the one that our dedicated and vigilant defense forces continue to destroy through their ongoing operations and missions.
In the last 5 days alone, Russian troops have lost 524 soldiers in the Pokrovsk direction. Another 260 were wounded. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Ukrainian soldiers also neutralized 55 units of ground military equipment and destroyed about 300 various enemy UAVs. Meanwhile, fighters of the 7th Air Assault Corps of the Ukrainian Armed Forces have cut off Russian supply routes on the approaches to Pokrovsk. As a result of the airstrike, the road connecting the city with the occupied Selidov was destroyed. Thus, the Russian army lost the ability to use this route to infiltrate Pokrovsk with light vehicles. In other areas, Ukrainian soldiers are installing additional engineering barriers. At the same time, the command of the Russian occupation forces is sending suicide squads to clear these obstacles.
Our task, and this is the most likely scenario, is to disrupt the enemy's offensive potential. For this, we need to destroy as much as possible to eliminate as many of their resources as possible that are timed for this operation. If they run out of resources, the offensive will stop and they will have to regroup. I don't know what the Russian generals will do there if they run out of resources for the autumn-winter campaign. But in that case, their offensive will be stopped or at least suspended. And this will allow us, if we are ready to continue the defense of Ukraine, to maneuver our resources.
Russian troops attempted a breakthrough towards Novopavlivka. Taking advantage of the fog, the enemy set up a crossing between Yalta and Dakhne, moving about a dozen pieces of equipment across. However, the soldiers of the Perun unit of the 42nd Separate Mechanized Brigade immediately deployed drones. As a result of their coordinated actions, they destroyed 2 Russian tanks and 5 armored combat vehicles. Long-range drones from the Alpha Special Operations Center of the Security Service of Ukraine struck enemy positions in Novorossiysk. 4 S-400 Triumph SAM launchers were destroyed along with 2 early warning and target acquisition radars. The launchers were located on the grounds of the Kuban Red Banner Regiment's military base. Ukrainian Defense Forces also carried out a missile and bomb strike on the Ryazan oil refinery. The information was confirmed by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The facility produces gasoline and diesel, liquefied gas, and about 840,000 tons of aviation kerosene per year. It is this kerosene that is used by the Russian aerospace forces. Numerous explosions and a large-scale fire were reported on the refinery's premises. Partisans from the Atesh movement have identified the exact location of the Russian Strela plant in Orenburg, which manufactures P-800 Onyx missiles. According to their information, the facility is a key element of the military-industrial sector and regularly supplies Russian troops with high-precision missiles for strikes against Ukraine. Atesh agents conducted detailed reconnaissance, specifically determining the exact coordinates of production workshops, finished goods warehouses, security layouts, and shipping routes. The collected data has been handed over to the Ukrainian Defense Forces for further action. And in the past 24 hours, the Ukrainian Defense Forces have eliminated another 1,000 Russian occupiers. Thus, the total combat losses of the Russian army since the beginning of the full-scale invasion have already exceeded 1,157,000 people. In addition, Ukrainian fighters destroyed 6 tanks, 19 armored vehicles, 20 artillery systems, 1 multiple launch rocket system, 2 air defense systems, and eliminated 90 units of enemy automotive equipment.
Estonia has allocated 3.5 million euros to Ukraine for the purchase of Starlink communication systems. This was announced by Estonia's Minister of Defense Hanno Pevkur. These funds are being provided through the IT coalition led by Estonia and Luxembourg. The minister also noted that Ukraine is fighting every day for the freedom of all of Europe, including Estonia, and that it is necessary to help Ukraine in every possible way.
This is extremely valuable assistance for Ukrainians, which has a noticeable impact on the combat situation. The capabilities of Starlink are especially important given Kyiv's intention to significantly increase the number of drones. After all, they require high-performance internet connectivity. In addition to weapons, information technology support is also of critical importance. And that is why I am glad that we can help Ukraine improve its IT capabilities. By doing so, we are increasing Ukrainians' chances of winning the war, which claims hundreds of lives every day. Hanno Pevkur, Minister of Defense of Estonia, from a statement on the ministry's website.
Ukraine will become a member of the European Union at the beginning of the next decade. This is the opinion of Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski, reports Polsat News. According to him, Ukraine already has candidate status despite the fact that Hungary is blocking the process on this issue. In Sikorski's opinion, the Russian dictator Putin will not be able to withstand another 3 years of war with Ukraine, which will be supported by the West. This will be aided in particular by the funds obtained from the frozen assets of Russian assets.
Currently, Ukraine produces about half of its own drones and missiles on its territory. Putin has not achieved what he wanted. We thought he had the second strongest army in the world, but he has already been fighting in Donbas for 10 years. I wouldn't call that a victory. Radosław Sikorski, the head of Poland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, on The Rest is Politics podcast.
Hungarian opposition leader Péter Magyar is rallying supporters to remove Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán from power in next year's elections. Thus, Magyar's center-right party TISA is now confidently ahead of the ruling Fidesz party. As Reuters notes, Magyar criticizes economic policy and is the main political threat to Orbán in his 15 years in power. His position is also weakened by the state of the Hungarian economy, which is in stagnation, the agency notes.
You, Viktor Orbán, instead of giving the country a so-called sharp start, have plunged it and our people into the mire of recession, debt, and American financial aid. You have betrayed the values of the 1956 revolution, the memory of our freedom-loving ancestors, and all of civil Hungary as a whole.
A reparations loan to Ukraine will be a strong argument for Russia to end the war. This is the opinion of Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius. The Kremlin will see that Kyiv is provided with long-term support. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom and Canada have stated that they are ready to follow the European Union's example and provide Ukraine with their own reparations loans using frozen Russian assets. My colleague Kristina Dombrovskaya will continue on this topic.
The EU and NATO agreed to spend more than 3.5% of GDP on defense. But so far, the allies are allocating only 0.1% to support Ukraine. This is absolutely illogical, said Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius. He is convinced that the only way to persuade Putin to end the war is to radically increase military aid to Kyiv.
A reparations loan based on $140 billion of frozen Russian assets could be a breakthrough towards peace. The same applies to safe loans, which member states can use to produce weapons and equipment in Ukraine or in cooperation with it. Andrius Kubilius, European Commissioner for Defense and Space, from a speech at the European Future of Ukraine conference on the European Commission's website. In
2025, the EU allocated €150 billion in defense loans through SAFE to support Ukraine among 19 countries. This program provides for long-term, low-interest loans for the purchase of weapons, ammunition, missiles, artillery, air defense systems, and drones. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Japan have already announced their readiness to provide Ukraine with their own reparations loans using Russia's frozen assets, according to European Commissioner for Economy Valdis Dombrovskis.
Support for Ukraine should have a distinctly grant-like character, and a reparations loan makes it possible to do this without imposing a significant additional fiscal burden on the member states. There are other options as well. We are working on what to do with the remaining funds that accumulate until Russia pays reparations. Obviously, there are risks that need to be taken into account, especially in the case of Belgium. And this is certainly something the European Commission is working on very seriously. In
the Belgian government, there are concerns that the country will become the main target of retaliatory actions from Russia. After all, most of the aggressor's assets are held in the Belgian depository Euroclear. The Prime Minister of Belgium has demanded that all EU member states share the legal and financial risks associated with the loan.
Russia threatens Europe in many ways. Let's not allow this to drive us crazy. This is about the concerns of the Belgian people. We need to listen to this carefully. We need to think about how to deal with this in order to free up resources to support Ukraine, which is under daily attack from Russia.
A decision on using frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine must be made as soon as possible, insists the German Chancellor. Kyiv should be provided with long-term financial resources for defense. This is the highest priority, emphasized Friedrich Merz.
We are having a very intense discussion about the use of these assets. We are also conducting ongoing bilateral and multilateral negotiations with various countries, members of the European Union, to determine whether we can take this path together. All options are being considered.
The European Union has assured that the issue of using frozen Russian assets to financially support Ukraine remains on the agenda, and the final decision will be made at the summit of EU country leaders in December. At the same time, the EU is working on a new sanctions package against the aggressor country.
Work is underway on the 20th package of restrictions. They are clearly more effective when supported by our international partners. The latest measures by the US are already depriving Russia of revenues it uses to finance its war.
Ukraine has proposed that the EU's 20th sanctions package include Russian legal entities and individuals who are still profiting from energy resources, as well as those involved in the abduction of Ukrainian children. This was reported by President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Kristina Dombrovskaya for Freedom TV channel.
Hostilities in Ukraine should end in the near future. US President Donald Trump stated this in an interview with GB News. According to him, The pressure exerted on the aggressor country by the US together with other countries will eventually force the Kremlin to end the war against Ukraine.
This is a terrible bloodbath, the deadliest since World War II. We are putting pressure on Russia through Indian oil. Other countries are also refusing it. After all, when Russia sells oil, it gets money to act. I think we'll handle this. I hope soon.
Donald Trump also stated that the US will conduct a nuclear test again fairly soon. He noted that other countries such as Russia and China are already doing this, and he emphasized that the US has a larger nuclear arsenal than other states. He also personally worked on its modernization despite criticism. The American leader also noted that China could catch up with the US in terms of nuclear arsenal strength within 4 to 5 years. At the same time, Trump expressed a desire to pursue denuclearization and proposed organizing a meeting of leaders to reduce nuclear arsenals. We will have nuclear tests
because other countries are conducting them. There are countries that are conducting them. We have more nuclear weapons than any other country. I'm the one who modernized them and built some of them, and I hated having to do it, but there was no choice because others have them too.
In Khabarovsk, a Rossiya Airlines plane made an emergency landing. There were 90 passengers and 5 crew members on board. This was reported by local media. According to eyewitnesses, during the flight from Vladivostok to Blagoveshchensk, part of the plane's fuselage came off and some parts fell off the engine. The Far Eastern Transport Prosecutor's Office reported a technical malfunction, which caused the aircraft to make an emergency landing in Khabarovsk. After the incident, the investigative committee launched an inquiry regarding violations of the rules for the safety and operation of air transport. Based on the results of this inquiry, a procedural decision will be made.